The soldiers' tales about this story could fill an entire collection of essays. Some of them are particularly notable because they walk the line between common sense and absurdity. How about the tale from Afghanistan that claims Soviet soldiers boiled ammunition during the war? At first glance, this makes no sense, and even on second thought, it still doesn't. However, there is a historical precedent for this, and we'll explain the meaning behind this interesting procedure. But first, let's delve into the 19th century. Afghanistan was a coveted piece of land due to its advantageous geographical location, and with the influence of the British, Russians, and Americans, the country became a constant battleground. From 1979 to 1982, the Soviet Union had a presence in Afghanistan as part of a peacekeeping mission. A series of ongoing revolutions led to a civil war in the country. The Soviet Union supported one side of the conflict, while the U.S. and the Western world supported the other. Each side had a clear and supposedly righteous position, but it all boiled down to one thing. Ordinary people suffered, forced to give their lives for unclear political goals. Any war is a business, as governments know. The Soviet government spent millions daily to sustain the war effort, and naturally soldiers saw little of this money in practical terms, such as food, clothing, and basic hygiene products. They fought on behalf of a government that supported the existing Afghan government, but in reality, this translated into huge markets across the country at all levels. At higher levels, senior officers halted convoys with provisions and sold soldiers' food to Afghans. Similarly, at lower levels, soldiers sold anything they could to get food, sleep, and appear dignified. Military historian Mikhail Shirokov noted in his research that near the barracks, there was a massive market where Afghan people had money and goods for trade. The U.S. and the rest of the world supported them. Naturally, the higher-ups in the Soviet hierarchy had goods to trade as well, and foremost among these was the famous canned stew, a product highly valued in the Soviet Union and thus in demand on the market. Officers exchanged money with Afghans for food, leaving ordinary soldiers like Ivan in the lurch. Not only were they sent to certain death, but were also not properly supplied. This led soldiers to engage in trade to acquire food, clothing, and perhaps some vodka. However, what could a simple soldier trade with? They had plenty of ammunition and weapons thanks to the USSR's industrial development. However, keeping track of ammunition in wartime conditions was nearly impossible. This is where the tale comes in. Many stories and even serious research mention that Soviet soldiers indeed traded ammunition and grenades for food. This can be considered a fact, but the tale is that before selling, the soldiers supposedly boiled the cartridges for a couple of hours. The main problem with selling ammunition to Afghans was that these cartridges could end up being resold to enemies, who could then use them against the same soldiers who sold them. The tale suggests that boiling the cartridges for a long time not only gave them a nice appearance, but also made them unusable. Allegedly, the gun would simply eject such ammunition instead of firing it. But is this true? The answer is quite obvious, but let's clarify a few points first. You can find numerous videos online testing this tale, and they all confirm that boiled ammunition fires just fine. We personally know a soldier who tested this theory and fired boiled ammunition without any issues. In short, it's a good story for debunkers of legends, but we'll do their job and take a brief chemistry lesson. Hopefully everyone knows that it's not the cartridge that hits the target, but the bullet propelled by the contents of the cartridge. Inside the cartridge are a gunpowder charge and a primer. Striking the primer activates the reaction inside the cartridge, which propels the bullet out of the barrel at high speed. There are countless chemical substances used to create this reaction, and new ones are invented every year. But mostly modern primers for firing bullets use lead azide in combination with TNT. These substances don't care about boiling. Moreover, modern cartridges are stainless steel, and their internal parts are well protected against external influences. It wouldn't be very convenient if a bag of cartridges exploded upon impact, would it? That's why boiling modern cartridges is pointless and always yields the same result. The cartridges continue to shoot just fine. However, we're talking about Afghanistan, events of which concluded 30 years ago. Times were different then, and mercury fulminate was often part of the primers at that time. It's worth noting that efforts to replace it began in the early 20th century, but the process of modernization takes time. Theoretically, it's possible that cartridges based on mercury fulminate were in Afghanistan Mercury fulminate decomposes and loses its explosive properties during prolonged heating at around 90 degrees Celsius. So, in summary, it can be stated that some cartridges from Afghanistan did indeed become unusable after boiling, and the lucky mujahideen boot them, only to wonder why the ammunition didn't work. Does this mean that the soldier's tale is true? The answer is quite simple. Boiling cartridges likely occurred, but not everywhere, and not all cartridges were based on mercury. The operation was successful in some cases, but not in others. The essence is that the poor soldiers did whatever it took to survive, and we can't blame them for trading ammunition. Certainly we can't blame the soldiers who did something to render the sold cartridges useless. It's like decorative icons in a car, serving purely aesthetic purposes, but no one blames them for being there. War is a dirty place full of corruption and hopelessness. According to estimates from the general staff officers, during the Afghan operation, 26,000 Soviet soldiers died, while 115,000 contracted infectious hepatitis, 31,000 contracted typhoid fever, and another 140,000 got other diseases. Direct combat was a small part. The real killer was the intensity of military action. So if a soldier pointlessly boiled cartridges before selling them, you can understand why. Until we meet again, friends.